Thank you. Yeah, wow. Are we blessed? Chris Foster specifically requested this Sunday to be here with you so he could share that beautiful music and more. Are you feeling particularly patriotic in this beautiful moment? Our United States of America stands for something. We breathe into this pride and this notion that we stand for freedom, liberty. And in Unity, we teach about freedom, we teach about liberty. You could call politics in the United States liberty on the outside, and in spiritual communities, we tend not to talk about that, right? In fact, we choose not to talk about that. But the inner freedom we do talk about, don't we? We talk about all ways that no matter what's going on outside of us, that any sort of government, any sort of situation, circumstances, ideas, relationships, anything outside of us that we may think inhibits our freedom can't really do that. Not in truth, not in principle, because there is an inner practice, an inner freedom that goes beyond all outer conditions. What does freedom mean to you? Really breathe into that question. What does freedom mean to you? What is freedom? What would it mean if you could define it for your world? If you answered anything outside of yourself to outer circumstances, check in again. What does it really mean? Even beyond the outer circumstances, what are we really seeking? I always say when we have prayers, when we launch our prayers, we oftentimes pick these things, we pick people, places, things, these ideas, these materials, but always underneath those things, the prayer is for some principle, some activity, some emanation that is God consciousness. So if I think I want stuff, what I really want is the spirit of abundance. What I really want is to know that I'm always taken care of. If I think I want a soulmate relationship, if I think I want a family, if I think I want tons of friends, what I really want is to feel the God presence, the Christ presence, the enlightened presence, the unity among all people. I just want to feel that. And in my mind, right? In my mind, I have these labels and these forms, and I think, well, that's the best way to get it. I've seen people get it like that out there, and I want some of that, so bring it on. In Unity, we teach the doorway to bringing it on is within. I always tell young people when they speak about college and whether or not they're going to go to college, I always say, Go for this reason, and even if it's just for this reason only, just do it. You get more choices. You get more freedom. Even in today's society, a lot of times the door is just shut. The door is just shut unless we do something else. We're at an interesting tipping point in our consciousness where we're learning to recognize absolute intelligence and skills and gifts, but we're dealing with an environment and a culture that says, oh, only if you have this certificate or this degree, only if you've gone through this program at this time and you have this stamp, right? The new consciousness will break through that, but we're on the cutting edge of that. So what can we do in every moment to expand our choices, to expand our liberties? In the United States of America and probably all around the world, we're always trying to define and defend human liberties. Guns, prayer, force, freedom, all liberty. Human liberties. The real human liberties are not about politics. I feel very comfortable in saying that. Real human liberty has nothing to do with politics. I'm clear about that, and that's why I would like to take the liberty to congratulate our Supreme Court, our country, our men, our women who have stepped forward to acknowledge basic human rights for all people in this great country of ours, for expanding again closer to reality of truth, the definition of what it is to be a beautiful being of light, an expression of God consciousness, a human being on this planet. Some of you are always proud to be an American, and some of you are prouder today. So most important, freedom is our ability to follow our hearts, isn't it? Isn't that what everyone really wants, is the ability to follow their heart, not to have to trade their intuitive consciousness, not to have to trade what their spirit calls them to do, what the God of their knowing calls them to do and to be and to act on, not to trade it for any sort of outer rules, circumstances, situations, ideas, family systems, education systems, not to trade it for anything, right? Because once we get the fire, once we become awake and alive in the Spirit, we know that we are loyal to one thing and one thing only. And that is the absolute Spirit of truth, the Spirit of life, love, and wisdom that exists within all beings, that in fact binds us all. God consciousness, the spiritual impulse embedded within you, that which goes beyond names and naming. There's no trading that for anything. So it's about inner freedom today, because we know we can do all of this outer fighting about our outer freedoms, but inner freedom is something that we can each claim in every moment, no matter what the circumstances we're in. Jack Sparrow, Captain Jack Sparrow, the wise one, said, "The problem is not the problem. The problem is not the problem." We all have the free ability to pursue this idea within our own consciousness in every single moment, to look at everything in the outer and say, the problem out there is not the problem. And to look at what underlies our reality, our consciousness, and our lives. Raise your hand if you were here for the movie Happy. We just saw the movie Happy on Friday night in our Friday Spiritual Cinema Summer Series. In the movie Happy, the fantastic film, it said there are 3 factors that determine happiness. You have your set point, which is where you come when you come here, your genetics, how you're made up, your set point. And that consists of about 50% of your potential to be happy. You have intentional activity and also life circumstances. Which do you think is 40% and which do you think is 10%? Intentional activity, life circumstances. Which do you think is the 10%? Life circumstances. What do we complain about 40 to 50 to 90%? Is it the life circumstances or is it the intentional activity? Life circumstances, don't we? Isn't that ironic? So the researchers are studying this and they're saying, no, about 40% is really up to you. It depends on what you spiritually ingest, digest, and become and radiate and emanate out in your world. But our limited consciousness tends to have an ego war with this idea that, oh no, it's all the 10%. 20 years ago, he left me. And it went downhill ever since. Oh no, I had a job once and it paid like this and I was treated like this and this and that and this and that. And ever since then in it's all gone downhill. A big whopping 10%. 10%. But 40% is up to us. And that's why we're here today, is it not? Amen? Because we know how big that 40% is. We know that it probably takes, the size of a mustard seed. It probably takes very, very little, actually, to birth that happiness, that peace within in our consciousness. So it said in the film that even though we experience fluctuations in happiness, we return to our set point, whether that set point is genetically high, medium, or low. In summary, 40% of our happiness is within our locus of control. Even when we factor in life circumstances such as income level or being married versus being single, some life circumstances such as higher incomes are not tied to greater levels of happiness. While there's debate among scholars about exactly what percentages can be attributed to one's actual set point, intentional activities, and life circumstances, there is a consensus that happiness can be learned. Amen? We know this because we look out on human experiences, right? We look out at Holocaust survivors. We look out at people that have to live a different life than we do, a life where people tell them, just you, not everybody else, but you don't get to do what you want to do or love the way you want to love or live where you want to live, right? And there's all these situations, all these circumstances of that, right? You can fill in the blank. We've all experienced them in our own lives. It may have even been in your family of origin. There may have been someone else that could go do these things, but not you. Maybe we've done it to other people. Maybe we've done it in systems and in structures. But we know that that doesn't determine our lives, because there are people who have gone through all sorts of experiences that rise to the occasion of love, birth love, share love, and end cycles of violence, end cycles of depression, end cycles of suffering, and raise into the consciousness of love. That's true freedom. True freedom is a state of mind where you can be with anything on the external, but experience peace within, experience freedom within, and let that guide and direct our thoughts, our words, our actions, our activity, our life consciousness. But sometimes we get stuck. We get stuck in these human forms in our activity of being people, and we forget that we have this inner freedom. I was thinking about the inner freedom recently, and I came to 3 ideas, 3 ways that we keep ourselves, and I'm sure we find more, but that we keep ourselves in shackles. We keep ourselves from that freedom. One of the ways, I believe, is by not landing in the here and now. By pulling ourselves so out of this moment that we can't find God, we can't find spirit, we can't find self. Have you ever been such a strong spiritual seeker that you felt captive in your human form? That you felt somehow like you don't belong here, like you're from somewhere else, meant to be somewhere else, trying to get somewhere else? That there's something in you that's so strong that something about being a person, being a human, being here feels wrong. It's a subtle little experience, isn't it? Because it has a cloak over it. And that cloak is reaching for something higher. That cloak is drawing in spiritual activity. That cloak is saying, I want to do the will and the work of the Spirit of truth. That cloak is good. But that cloak can sometimes make this wrong. Make this wrong. Make the heart wrong. Make the mind wrong. And when it does, what do we feel disconnected to? Spirit. We feel disconnected with self. We feel alienated in the presence of other. And this human form doesn't become such a fantastic adventure of happiness and joy and peace. It becomes a burden. If you really breathe into this question, and no one's answering it for us, but really breathe into this question of, is it a mistake that I'm here? Am I a mistake? Is there something wrong with the activity of my life in this body being, in this human form? I would guess that many more of us than we would even think have somewhere in our conscious or subconscious mind an idea that there is something wrong with being here, that somehow being here isn't what it's about, that there's something to do, some place to go, or something to get. And we search for it in material ways, in the ways of the world, but we also search for it by getting out of this present moment. I have a friend who, I love it because he's one of my friends that doesn't go to Unity very often. It's always good to have one of those. As a minister, you need to have at least one. Otherwise, you're a lunatic walking around and you're not in touch with the rest of the world, right? You're in this bubble. this metaphysical bubble of light and God and woo, woo, woo. So I was talking with this friend who doesn't often come to Unity, and he said, actually, he and his wife were telling us how they started as spiritual seekers, and she actually started as a spiritual seeker through his impulse and his readings, because he was really seeking. And he shared with me that through his seeking, he realized he was getting out of now. And so he decided to let go. And I'm not saying don't come to Unity. It's going to be empty next week. I'll be like, guess what? We don't need it. The truth is we don't. But we want it because we love it, right? And it joins us, it binds us, it reminds us. But he came to this epiphany and he said, I realized for me I needed to get out for a little bit of all this spiritual seeking and all this trying to be so spiritual and try to start being a human being. Just to be a human being and be a good human being. And as he was talking, I had this funny little, when you're thinking as people are talking and you realize that after they're done sharing and you're done thinking, a cartoon just ran through your head and you have a whole storybook. So I had that happen, and I realized after he was telling me this story that I had this little vision of us in heaven consciousness, wherever in the afterlife, and recognizing each other as little beams of spirit, and everybody that was at the table having this conversation, like meeting in the invisible, right? The non-local form without our bodies, and just beaming thoughts to each other. And all of a sudden, there was this friend of mine, and we're all having this conversation at the same table, but in consciousness, so these beams of light. And everyone's saying, "What? Wow, okay, now we're over here. Well, what just happened? What just happened?" And all of a sudden, we all realize that so many of us, myself included, were sitting here the whole time in this human form, trying to get back to where we are now in the non-local, invisible form. And there was only one person at the table that was like, yeah, I did what we said we'd come here to do. I did it. I landed. I was present. I was a human. I was a spiritual human, but a human. And I, in my little cartoon, I was thinking, and I sat there and went, oh, man. Now I got to go back and do it again, and I'm going to land next time. No. It was a good moment, a good realization, because it's a subtle consciousness, but it can separate us from our good, separate us from our God, and separate us from each other if we think we're not supposed to be here. So what would life be like if we released any concept of that? What would life be like if right here is the fullness of the moment? If right here exists everything? If right here you're exactly where you're supposed to be, who you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be, and in fact, you're right on time for your life and the soul progression of the evolution of your consciousness. What if you are right on time? How might everything else look different? The second thought of how we get out of our freedom, out of the captivity, or we get into the captivity, let's say, and out of freedom. The second thought is this: we as spiritual human beings, and I think we could say this about most people. We try, even when it gets mangled and it's so unrecognizable that you think that couldn't have been a good intention, but I think most people really have good intentions. I think most people are really striving to do the will and the work of the Spirit that sent them, the Spirit that activates the life force in them, as them, through them. I think most people go around in their lives trying to discern what that infinite beauty that makes the birds fly, that creates this very universe, that births a baby, that has eyes that see into the heart of each other, what that wants for us, what that wants as me in expression. I think that most people are right on track with that intention. But I think we can come to a stop point. I think we can start to halt when we start getting worried that we're not going to be in alignment with what that highest will, that highest intention is. And we kind of jack ourselves up. Have you ever done it? Have you ever tried to make a decision? Not even going to say anything more than that, just tried to make a decision, What if you gave up the concept of trying to make a decision? A decision. Think about replacing the word decision with discernment. I gave up being confused a few years ago for Lent. And so when I gave that up, I could no longer say I'm confused. And if you're not confused, then you really can't make decisions, because decisions are kind of like, weighing things, this or that, this or that, this or that. That's the world of decisions, right? Well, the world of discernment just out the window. The world of discernment just goes like this. I'm listening. I'm clearer now. I'm listening. I'm clearer now. That resonates. I'm clearer now. That's the world of discernment. But when we get into the world of decisions, sometimes we get ourselves stuck. In the book of Secrets by Deepak Chopra, he says this, and get ready for a doozy. So we'll slow down, calm your mind, because I could have just said this, and then we could have all gone home today. Are you ready? Don't think it's over after this, because there's more. It's the day of freedom and liberty. Deepak Chopra says, if you obsess over whether you are making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action that you experience. I'll share that again. If you obsess over whether you are making the right decision, you are basically assuming that the universe will reward you for one thing and punish you for another. The universe has no fixed agenda. Once you make any decision, it works around that decision. There is no right or wrong, only a series of possibilities that shift with each thought, feeling, and action you experience. Amen. He goes on to say, if that sounds too mystical, refer again to the body. Every significant vital sign, body temperature, heart rate, oxygen consumption, hormone level, brain activity, and so on, alters the moment you decide to do anything. Decisions are signals telling your body, mind, and environment to move in a certain direction. How would our lives change if this possibility, and it may be very uncomfortable even to try it on, because we live in a system of duality, in a world of duality, where we are constantly, I think, whether or not we're aware of it, trying to make the right decision as if there's the wrong one, as if something's going to bless us or curse us, which is really the old school way of thinking. Here's the last one, number 3. We can either get stuck by calling it bad, or we can have liberation by calling it good. What does that mean, calling it bad or calling it good? I want to share with you a quote from Mary Mannon Morrissey, the spiritual leader. She said, what if every single thing that was happening in your life was actually good? And by this good and calling it good, it's a capital G. It's a lot different from a lowercase g. It's a capital G. What if every single thing that was happening in your life was actually good? What if everything in your life was part of a good that you can't even comprehend or begin to believe, but you can trust anyway? The poet Hafez said, what if you were playing chess with the most intelligent, wise being that ever existed in the entire universe, and that being wanted you to become a master of the game? Where would every piece be on the chessboard that would help you become a master of the game? She goes on to say, every part of life is just like that. Life is set up so that we have the maximum opportunity to become realized as the son or daughter of God that we really are. Amen? So, are you ready to voluntarily, of your free will, if you choose, know some affirmations with me? No conditions bind me. Together, no conditions bind me. No conditions can bind me. Together, no conditions can bind me. I release any superstitions. Okay, wait, let me give this to you first because it's really the Unity way not to have you repeating stuff if you haven't heard it yet, because what if I just said something and you didn't want to read it or say it? So here it is. I release any superstitions known or unknown to me. If you would like to know that in the fullness of your being, please say it with me. I release any superstitions known or unknown to me. I am free. I am unlimited. I am free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. I am here, alive, right now. The fullness of God consciousness is right where I am. The fullness of God consciousness is right where I am. Do you believe that to be the truth? I do too. We are expressions of light. In the words of Benjamin Franklin, the Constitution only guarantees the American people the right to pursue happiness. You have to catch it for yourself. Namaste. So let's take a deep breath as we prepare to circulate our good, to circulate your offering, our offerings. If Unity has blessed you this day, if Unity has been for you a mode of inner freedom that creates outer freedom, will you dedicate your tithe today to this pursuit and this realization of freedom for all beings as we bless these tithes and offerings and circulate our great good abundantly? Together, divine love,